So Joe Rogan has gone full-on anti-Ukraine now and is now repeating Russian propaganda on his show. He now claims that he feels so much safer with Donald Trump in office as president and is complaining about Joe Biden allowing Ukraine to send missiles into Russian territory. He's now complaining about that. He's upset about that. He believes that Joe Biden is edging us on to World War III but has nothing to say about Vladimir Putin. This is the state of alternative media today. Now, I like Joe Rogan, okay? I'm not going to go hard on Joe Rogan. But Joe Rogan has been hijacked. Joe Rogan has been brainwashed by characters like Tulsi, RFK, Dave Smith. He goes on to talk about the military-industrial complex. He blames basically everybody but Vladimir Putin.
The world we're living in now, and that's LA, and that's New York, and that's a lot of places that got fucked up by incompetent people.
I don't know. I just feel safer knowing, like...
Pull this microphone with your face.
I feel safer knowing that Trump is in office.
I do too.
I feel great about it. Like, I just like...
What I don't feel safer is right now they're launching missiles into Russia.
Yeah.
How are you allowed to do that when you're on the way out? Like, the people don't want you to be there anymore. There should be like some sort of a pause for like significant actions that could potentially start World War III. Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president. Mm-hmm. It's the whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know shit about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Maybe that would be a good thing that we would like to avoid from a dying former president.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Joe Rogan had nothing to say when Russia bombed hospitals in Ukraine. Joe Rogan had nothing to say when thousands of Ukrainian children were being kidnapped by Russians and shipped to... Right, Joe Rogan had nothing to say when hospitals were being bombed by Russia. He had nothing to say when Ukrainian children were being trafficked and sent to Russia. Joe Rogan had nothing to say. Joe Rogan did not say, hey, like, Russia's egging us on to World War III by sending troops into a sovereign country and disproportionately bombing civilian infrastructure. Joe Rogan had absolutely nothing to say. Then, when Joe Biden simply reciprocates the energy that Russia has sent forth, now he's concerned about presidents being allowed to do certain things on their way out. A dying president is allowed to do something. Meanwhile, Joe, you support a criminal president. Donald Trump is such a horrible candidate that Joe Biden, in his final years of bodily efficiency, is still 10 times the president that Donald could ever be. Now, Joe then goes on to say F you to Zelensky for some reason.
It's the whole thing is nuts.
I mean, look, I don't know shit about politics.
Zelensky says Putin is terrified. Fuck you, man. Fuck you people. You fucking people are about to start World War III.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Russia fired a missile today.
I feel like
they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time ever. It's the first time one of those has ever been used.
It's insanity.
It's fucking insanity, because those intercontinental ballistic missiles can have nukes on them. This one didn't, but if it does, the whole world changes, and it changes because of the military-industrial complex, and it changes because of the money that's going to Ukraine, and it changes because the outgoing president or whoever the fuck is actually running the country has decided to do something fucking insane.
Notice Joe Rogan's language when he talks about this issue. He blames Joe Biden, Zelensky, the military-industrial complex, and these are the lies sold to the American people. These are the fantasies sold to the American people, that you could have peace if only your leaders would just stop being so bloodthirsty and war hungry. If only Joe Biden and Zelensky would allow Vladimir Putin to raze Ukraine to the ground, to kidnap their children, to destroy their ethnic identity, to just destroy them in their entirety. If only Joe Biden and Zelensky would stand down and allow this imperialistic force that has no reasonable demands to just completely lay waste to everything in Ukraine. If only we allowed our geopolitical adversary to stir up problems in Europe, to conquer all of Ukraine after consistently threatening to blow up planet Earth over and over again over the past 2 years. If only we would allow that nation state to just get more leg room and do a lot more, we could have peace. Joe Rogan is not even narrative captured. He's been lied to by Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and Dave Smith. This lazy analysis of wars by blaming everything on the military-industrial complex is what stupid people say to explain complex problems. The reality is, Russia is our geopolitical adversary. The United States gains by supporting Ukraine that weakens Russia in this war. Russia losing its economic stability and its military power in this war benefits the United States. Russia is not your friend. I know you conservatives think they are because they're white and Christian and anti-woke, but they're not your buddy. They don't want to be your buddy. They want your spot. They're the kind of guy who wants your position but can't really take it from you, so he, spreads rumors to your friends to turn them against you. Tries to get people who you trust to start looking at you a little bit different. He can't take you out from the front, but he starts conniving and conspiring behind the scenes to get the people around you to turn against you. The reality is, Ukraine gave away its nuclear weapons to Russia in exchange for national security guarantees from Russia, the United States, and other European nations in the Budapest Memorandum. I wonder which nation state violated that agreement. Which nation state decided, you know what, fuck that deal. We're just going to take Ukrainian land. Which nation state decided that? Oh, Russia in 2014. When they invaded Ukraine and took Crimea. Their reasoning back then was, we've got ethnic Russians in Crimea, and we have to secure them and save them from the Ukrainian genocide perpetrated against the Russian-speaking peoples, and blah, 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 all a lie. Ukraine had the gall to rebel against Russia's puppet, Yanukovych, and in response, they took Ukrainian land. That's the reality of it. Then when Ukraine said, this getting invaded shit is actually really bad, we don't really like this, we actually want to join NATO. Russia invades again. This time their excuse being, we can't have NATO on our border, despite the fact that NATO has always been on their border for quite some time. They've always been within ass-whooping distance. Now all of a sudden, they've never ever had a NATO nation on their doorstep, which ended up getting them, Sweden and Finland apparently, joining NATO. So now a new NATO nation state is bordering Russia. And after all of these geopolitical blunders and betrayals by Russia, breaking of Minsk, the breaking of Russia-NATO Founding Act, in which they agreed to honor NATO's right to welcome any nation state into NATO, they spread a lie over the course of the last 3 years, claiming that somehow or another, NATO promised to never ever expand 1 inch further to the east. But you can't find a document, you can't find a treaty, you can't find a memorandum, you can't find anything that corroborates this. NATO, one NATO nation state cannot make that agreement. All of them have to come together and make that agreement. Isn't it weird that none of them ever did? And isn't it weird that a document to the contrary exists? It's not weird. The reality is they just lie. And Joe Rogan has been lied to by his guests. He's been lied to by Tulsi Gabbard, lied to by RFK, lied to by Dave Smith. He's been lied to over and over and over and over and over again. He's been consistently lied to by these people. And he goes on his podcast and blames Joe Biden. Joe Biden was supposed to do this a long time ago. Russia was bombing Ukrainian hospitals. Joe Rogan, you said nothing. Russia was kidnapping Ukrainian children. Joe Rogan, you said nothing. Russia illegally invaded a nation state twice, and you said nothing. Now all of a sudden you want to complain about possibly causing World War III? You don't have anything to say about Putin. But you have all of this stuff to say about Biden and Zelensky. You say, F you, man. F you fucking people. And notice how Joe Rogan dances around the Ukrainian people who are fighting for their existence. He specifically picks easy targets. Zelensky, Joe Rogan. Well, what the fuck does Joe Rogan expect Zelensky to do, actually? You expect Zelensky to be a bitch? For a dude who loves combat sports, for a dude who loves UFC, he's been working for UFC for decades. For a dude who loves UFC, it's crazy to me that he would expect Zelensky to actually just surrender. Zelensky's doing what real G's do. Stand on business. Nigga invade your country, you stand on business. That's just the facts. Somehow or another, Joe Rogan expects Zelensky to just pack up his shit and run away. Somehow Zelensky's the problem. The reality is, Joe Rogan, if you want a peace deal, you have to give Ukraine leverage. You got to give Ukraine some kind of leverage to come to the table and say, well, if you don't give us this deal, we'll just make your country a hellhole. We'll just send missiles, just like you've been sending missiles. Donald Trump can't come to the negotiating table without Ukraine having some kind of leverage. See, what Donald wants and what and what MAGA wants is a deal in which Ukraine gives up land in exchange for peace. But that's not how peace works. See, Ukraine needs this thing called a national security guarantee. We asked them to give up their nuclear weapons in exchange for national security. Someone broke that agreement. Wonder who it could possibly be. They gave up their nuclear weapons, and they're not a part of NATO. What kind of national security guarantee do they have? All of Trump's base demands for no more money to go to Ukraine. Donald Trump's own base does not support him doing anything to support Ukraine's national security. They don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. They don't want Ukraine to have any money. Effectively, Donald Trump will have to kick the can down the road and say, I created peace. And give it about 6 or 7 years, Russia will invade Ukraine again. This is what happens when you derive historical information from characters like Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, and Dave Smith. Joe Rogan is woefully uninformed on this topic. Woefully uninformed. The reality is, Russia is not our friend. They may be white, they may be Christian, they may be anti-woke, and I know MAGA loves those things about Russia, but they're not your buddy. They don't want to be your friend. They don't want to be your friend at all. Okay? They don't want to be your buddy. I don't know why this is so hard to, this is just like, I don't know why I have to explain this, but apparently I do. I have to explain this to MAGA people. They still think Putin is their buddy. He's not your fucking buddy. He wants our spot. He wants our place. He wants our position. He doesn't want to be second fiddle to America or buddies with America. He wants to be the number one. That's just the reality of it. And Joe Rogan is ignorant to that. And he sits there and condemns Zelensky for saying Putin is scared. Like, has Joe Rogan missed the last 2 years? It's beyond my comprehension that he could say shit like this. He knows nothing about this conflict, has brought on 0 experts about it, and carefully picks who he'll bring on to speak about the topic. Joe Rogan, bring a real Ukrainian on, please. Or bring someone from the left who is an expert on the topic, please. Because every single right-leaning person you've brought on literally just lies about it over and over and over again, and everything you think about it is a lie. This blaming the military-industrial complex for this war. They didn't start this war. Putin started this war. You can't blame every single conflict on defense contractors. That's just the laziest way to analyze a conflict. Did the military-industrial complex make Putin invade? I didn't think so. Like, come the fuck on. Are we serious right now? Are we serious right now? The reality is the United States has more to gain from helping Ukraine than defense contractors making money. They're always going to make money. Strategically, we don't want Russia to conquer Ukraine. We don't want them closer to our NATO allies. We don't want to embolden them to think that NATO's not strong enough to contend to them and stand up to them. That we don't have the stomach to send weapons. That we don't have the stomach to send weapons, much less even fight them. We don't want to abandon a Western-friendly nation state like Ukraine that could be a NATO nation state if they survive this war. We don't want our geopolitical adversary to walk away from this war with their military and their economy fully intact. They are not our friends, they are our enemy, and we want to weaken them as best we can. Americans have been completely brainwashed into hating their own leadership, their own defense contracting companies. At this point, we might have been defeated. It's possible we've lost the war, the Cold War. It's possible we lost thanks to just lies. I don't know how we combat the bullshit being spread by Joe Rogan and friends, but like, this is crazy. And I love Joe Rogan. Love him. Love his show. Love Joe Rogan. But, you know, every single person you've brought on your show, Joe, is a liar. And you're none the wiser because you don't bring contrasting opinions on your show. It's insane to me that you still think this is because of the military-industrial complex, and you think that people are manipulating Joe Biden. Joe Biden's an actual professional who relies on the opinion of experts to direct him on how to handle the conflict, people who know about the history of it, unlike Tulsi Gabbard and Dave Smith and RFK. Like this is what we're dealing with, though, is an age of anti-intellectualism that can destroy the West. Hopefully Joe Rogan brings one of the Klitschko brothers on. One of them reached out to Joe Rogan and said, yo, like, I would love to come on your podcast. I think you're wrong. I disagree with you. And he handled it so well. He didn't go off on Joe Rogan. He didn't cuss him out. He didn't shit on him. And knowing Joe, he'll probably bring the guy on. whether it's, whether it's in person or whatever the case might be. But, we've got to fight back in this information war. We are losing. So Joe Rogan apparently does not like Ukraine. I don't know what could compel him to believe this. I don't know how it's Ukraine's fault that World War III could be on the horizon. It's crazy how all the people who have brought us closer to this have become the victims. Iran the victims, Hezbollah the victims, Houthis the victims, Hamas the victims, Putin the victims. This is insanity.